I value the good things in life: great food, comfortable clothes, the perfect pour at the end of a long day, and the hardworking people who bring quality products to life. I'm fascinated by how the things I love come to be. So I've teamed up with my friends at Nutrien Ag Solutions and Farm Journal to explore the journey from seed to shelf and to get to know the growers who dedicate their lives to making it happen. How are growers feeding a growing world? Come with me to find out. I'm Brett Griffin, and this is Leading the Field. It's a beautiful day here in the Hatch Valley in New Mexico, and I'm excited to learn more about one of my favorite nuts. It's a nut that we can't even all agree on how it's pronounced. Is it pecan or pecan? Either way, our growers here, Joe and Rosie, are going to teach us everything we need to know about this fabulous nut. And if you didn't know it, 80% of the world's pecan crop comes from right here in the United States. Let's go find out what it takes to get this awesome nut from their tree to our table. Hey guys, how's it going?
Good, how are you doing?
Good, I'm Brett.
Javier, good to meet you.
Good to see you.
Nice to meet you, Brett. Joe Lack.
Lack Farms.
Yes,
Is it
sir.
named after you?
No, after my wife. Let's get that right.
Hey, yeah, Rosie, where's she at?
Well, she's up there running an onion shed today.
What are you doing out here today?
Well, kind of just looking over the trees, kind of making sure we're still checking for little pecan nut case bearer and aphids. Those nuts are pretty susceptible right now to any kind of bug pressure or anything that just will keep it from filling and making that quality meat.
Right. I do notice that there's not a lot of undergrowth out here. Do you guys keep it that way on purpose? Is that something that Nutrien Ag Solutions helps with?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We provide the advice and products just to make sure that they keep the floor pretty clear of weeds and grass to compete with nutrients and water.
Joe, speaking of water, I noticed when I drove by the Lack Farm sign on the way in here, some of the orchards were flooded. Is that normal for this time of year?
Very much so. You know, we laser all this ground to make sure that when we put that water out there, we get as much efficiency as we can. And we just put a blanket of water, like you say, a flood deal in it, and it levels out pretty neat.
Where's the water coming from? Because I'm standing in the middle of a desert.
Two ways. We divert it from the Rio Grande River, and
Okay.
we put it in our canal systems, and then we put it in our cement ditches, and we bring it to our crops. And then also we have pumps. We pump it right out of the ground.
I noticed the nuts aren't real big this time of year. When do they start growing on the tree, and when do you normally take them off?
Well, normally late April is when we start having bud break and everything, and the trees put out the little nuts, and they get, fertilized, and then they start growing then.
Yeah.
May, 1st of May, right in there. And they go till it freezes, and then we harvest.
Well, Javier, this was a great idea bringing me to Lack Farms. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Joe and I are going to sneak off. I want to learn more about pecans because I'm from the South. We love pecan pie.
Yes,
so
sir.
I got to know all the things before I leave here.
I understand.
We'll be back.
All righty.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Come on, Joe. Let's go.
Thank you, sir. Let's go.
Now, how did these trees get here? Did you plant them from the beginning, or how did they get here?
We spaded these from the time you bare root plant till they produce enough nuts to offset your cost. It's about 7 years.
So you got to be really patient to be in the pecan farming business.
Yes, you got to have a lot of money to start up on them.
When these trees go in the ground, how long are they going to live?
If you keep a tree healthy and you keep your ground healthy, I've heard there's 3,000-year-old trees on America right now.
So the tree's pretty hardy.
Very hardy.
So is the nut hardy?
Yes, it's got things that could dang sure cause it not to be a real good eaten nut that are pretty vulnerable. But yeah, it's pretty hardy.
I noticed that the nut has a green shell around it. I'm assuming that's to protect the nut.
That's a husk. It grows inside that husk.
How do you know when that husk is ready to let the nut out, I guess?
It will crack on its own and open. As soon as that nut gets really good in October, well, then November we get our first frost. And so what happens, you go from a nut that's completely full and mature into cold storage. Out of all the growing climates in the United States, north of us 100 miles and south of us 100 miles is probably the most ideal climate in the United States for growing nuts. Isn't that neat?
That is neat.
My wife just showed up, the boss. Let's see what she's got to say.
Rosie, good to meet you.
Hello, Brett. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. This is an awesome operation you guys got. How long have you guys had this farm?
We've been on this farm since 1984.
That's a long time.
Right. Well, we've been farming longer than that. Joe, Paul, and I are both fourth-generation farmers here in the valley.
Awesome. And this farm's almost 40 years old.
These trees were transplanted trees out of a main orchard, but our main orchards are probably 65 years old.
They put off the same amount of nuts every year?
One leaf crop feeds the next year's nut crop. You tend to have alternate bearing. Now with our pruning, we've kind of hedged that back.
Okay, I can tell you love the soil, care about the soil. We talked about the water. Well, are you doing more things now than you've ever done to take care of the soil and water conservation and all those things? And what is that?
Well, New Mexico, we've been in severe drought. And sodium is our biggest enemy right now. These trees are struggling from sodium.
And where's that sodium coming from?
From our irrigation wells. We have water, but it's poor quality water.
Okay.
Because it's shallow water.
Okay.
We've got to get that fertility back in the ground. And how do we do that? Lots of sulfurs, lots of calciums.
Yeah.
Yeah, and good water on top pushing the salts down is key.
That's a good thing too.
You got to do that.
How much rain do you actually get here, and when does it come throughout the year?
Average rainfall for New Mexico is 6 to 8 inches, and we haven't seen that in 4 years combined.
Wow.
We're dry.
So when you say drought, you mean
We're dry.
serious drought.
We're
Yeah,
dry.
you take that watershed away from this valley and you wouldn't have any value in this ground.
Where are we at in the growing process right now?
Pretty much about half done. And one of the things we farmers do when we start getting from here to a little bit more mature in the season, we come out here and we get our knife and we cut this pecan to look at several things. One, we want to see if that pecan is filled out all the way to the end. And then as we cut it, we're starting to look for something called the water stage. And you can start seeing these cavities form in that nut, and you can start cutting through there.
It looks like you're cutting a piece of okra. I just expected to see a nut in there, and it's soft. That's insane.
The hard shell hasn't started to form yet.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you guys, home life. Y'all are out here all day working together.
What home life?
I mean, do you work sun up to sundown every day?
Yeah, Rosie comes in, she leaves in the dark. We get up at 4:30 every morning. She's out of the house by 6. She comes in about 8 o'clock every evening.
There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears
Yes,
that
there
goes
is.
into all these crops that you guys are out here growing.
Yes, there is.
Ton of people think if Walmart's open, we got food. Well, that's not true at all.
Right.
Right out here is where the tire meets the road.
How many people does it take out here when you start harvesting pecans?
We've got a crew of probably 15
At least.
in the harvest, and then I have a crew of probably 20 at the cleaning plant.
Wow.
Shake that with a great big shaker. The nuts and leaves all fall off the tree. Then you windrow it with the sweeper, and it's also got an air vein on it that pushes the nuts off this center line.
Right.
And then you sweep them together in a windrow like a hay windrow or a peanut windrow. And then you have a harvester that comes along, and it goes inside there, and what it does, it blows out all the dirt, all the leaves, anything light, even a hollow pecan.
Yeah.
And then the good stuff stays in the truck.
Well, I want to see what happens when the nuts leave here, and I want to go check out the cleaning shed. So I think that's probably our next step.
So we've come from the field where we showed you how we grow them. Now I'm going to show you how my brother, Kit, helps clean them.
Awesome. Kit, Brett, good to see you.
Carson, nice to meet you.
So this place is where the magic happens once the pecans leave the field.
This is where the finished product comes out.
So what happens?
They come in on big semis. Well, they're grain hoppers. Of course, we use them for our grain and our pecans. So they'll come over the pit, they drop down on a conveyor, and it's an adjustable conveyor, so we can speed it up or slow it down, depending on the size of the pecans. So then it comes up here, and it goes through a desticker, takes out your bigger limbs or some bigger rocks, and then from there it comes into our first aspirator, and what that does, it's sucking a lot of trash out. Okay, from there it comes up another conveyor, and it's a iron conveyor, so it kind of breaks up some hulls that are still loose, and they'll fall down, and then it'll come into this hopper right here, and from there we fill that up about 3/4.
Okay.
And then that's the inspection table.
So on a great harvest, how many pounds of pecans are going through here?
Whenever I got good quality, I can run anywhere from 15,000 to 20,000 pounds an hour.
Wow.
But normally it's 12 to 15.
And Rosie, I think it's important for us to understand too, when the nut leaves the end of this line, what happens to it?
Okay, we like to store in wood bins because it allows that nut to breathe. If that nut comes in with a higher than 4% moisture, it will mildew. And by putting it in wood, they breathe. And then we go into cold room. If it's going to be a domestically used nut, we can store it at 32 degrees. If it's going to be exported, we have to bring it down to -10 for the threat of insect.
You send them off to be shelled.
Right.
Yeah, and then once they're shelled, they're ready to be eaten. One of my favorite nuts. So let's
do
go
it.
check out what we're going to do to enjoy these things.
Let's do it. We can.
Thank y'all so much for the hospitality. I have learned a ton about pecans, and I got to say, Rosie, this may be the best pecan I've ever had.
New Mexico, it's pecans.
Pecan. Oh, okay.
Enjoyed the visit, and you're always welcome back to the land of enchantment.
Thank you so much. Can I take some of those home with me?
You bet. You bet.
Awesome. I'm going to take a whole bag.
You got it.
All right.
Hey Brett, how's New Mexico?
Man, it was great. Great people, hot temperatures, and pretty crops.
What'd you think about those peppers and pecans?
I gotta say, man, the peppers lit me up. They were just as hot as the temperature outside. And the pecans, I had no idea you had to take care of them year round.
What'd you think of that family?
Hard-working family. Rosie is up every morning at 4 a.m. and she doesn't come off the farm until 8 o'clock. It's not a job, it's not a career, it's literally their life.
Yep, we're lucky enough here at Nutrien Ag Solutions to get to work with those types of people every day. So, man, I really appreciate this adventure you've been on. What do you think's coming up next?
Man, I think you got to send me on a new journey next year. I've had so much fun visiting all these farms, meeting all these growers. We got to come up with some new places.
I tell you what, man, I'll start putting some things together and get you a care package out. Put you on an adventure.
Sounds good. Love you, buddy.
Talk to you soon.